Welcome back to Switch to Linux. It is Monday and it is time for another Linux Top 5, and today we are going to tackle the top 5 distros for 2019. And I wanted to pick distros that had a significant reason why we should be watching these in 2019. I also did not want to make it too close to previous lists, so I had to think out of the box a little bit and decide some different factors and some specific reasons why I wanted to pick these distros. Some of them will be the same as last year's edition, but some of them are going to be different. So let's go ahead and jump on in. Number 5 is Archlabs. So Archlabs is a great distro that kind of started as an Arch-based version of Bunsen Labs, which is a Windows manager based on Debian. So Archlabs itself is now, of course, based on Arch, as you would imagine. And what they did in their most recent iteration is switched from an old traditional Bunsen Labs type approach to becoming an Arch installer rather than what they used to be. And so now you have a very easy to install Arch-based system where you can pick your desktop environment, you can pick some general software packages and a few other options, and away you go. So it is a great system. Now, it is number 5 on my list because this is not necessarily for the new user. You are going to have to boot into a terminal and install it through a terminal, but they have made the installer a very easy installer to use, even though it is a terminal-based system. Regardless, you get the stability and the rollingness of Arch. You have a full-fledged Arch system, a variety of desktop environments, and for the most part, I found that this thing to be very stable. I'm running it on my backup PC now, and it is just a great distro. So definitely keep an eye out for Archlabs in 2019. Number 4, I'm placing Elementary OS. Of course, if you follow my channel, you know I'm not a huge fan of Elementary OS, but there are some great things it has going for it. It is trying to become a Mac clone, which is certainly not something that I look at and go, whatever. But some of the great things about it. Number 1, it's one of the only distros out of the box, very simply, that has very good parental controls. So if you are having a family computer, you need different accounts for different people. You can set up the time they're on the internet, the applications they're allowed to use, all out of the basic, easy-to-use system manager. And the other reason I really wanted to pick up on Elementary, and kind of the reason I want to watch it this year, is because they have taken an approach which is a very good developer-based approach. We often forget in the free and open source community to help and support our software. Well, what Elementary does is their custom software center actually has the ability, very simply within it, to pay the developers for the software if you choose to do so. And that is just a great option. I really like the direction the Elementary team has gone with that particular point. And so what you get is you get an Ubuntu-based system. Some of the things are stripped out so that if all you're doing is installing this and some of its curated software, it's going to be a very good distro for you. If you want to treat it like Linux, do a lot of other things, install deb packages, add PPAs, all that kind of stuff, it's probably not going to be as easy to use or as stable for you. That's been my experience. But if you're looking for something very simple for basic computer tasks, getting on the internet, checking your email, doing multimedia things, maybe writing some documents, Elementary OS is probably not going to steer you wrong. And I love that system model where they're trying to make it easier for us to support the developers who are making all of this great software. So that is my number 4, is Elementary OS. Number 3, Solus Linux. I've run Solus a couple times this last year. It almost made my list for my 2018 top Linux distros, but there were some issues with the installer and some issues when you got it installed. When you first ran updates in the GUI, it would break the system, so I left it out on that video. Those issues have since been resolved. But the reason I wanted to watch Solus this year, there's a couple reasons. Number 1 is they managed to survive a developer change. The key developer of the Solus project left quite suddenly, and the rest of the team were so dedicated and so interested in keeping this project going, they really did everything they could to salvage everything out of the project. And that's why we got 3.99999 instead of the 4 release this year. But they're on track to get that Solus 4 released. This is also the distro that has developed the Budgie desktop, which is one of my favorite desktop environments. They also have downloads for not only for their Budgie, they have downloads for GNOME and Mate as well. So if you are looking for, the Solus Budgie is just a beautiful desktop environment. It is definitely one of my favorites, probably my favorite modern one, depending on where you put Cinnamon. I still like that a little bit more. But they have the GNOME, they have the Mate, and you can download this guy, get it up and running, and those update bugs have been fixed. These guys did survive losing their lead developer, and honestly, this is a dedicated team, and they have done a great job with their system. They don't have quite as much curated software because Solus is not based on anything else. It is a Linux from scratch. It is a new thing like Debian, Arch, and Solus. Obviously doesn't have this massive list behind it. One of the ways they really help themselves grow is the inclusion of snap packages, which again, personally, I'm not a huge fan of, but it does allow you to extend the functionality for the software that is not in the Solus repos. So Solus is definitely a great Linux distro, and I highly recommend having a look at it. Number 2. Once again, number 2 on my list is Manjaro. And what I really like about the Manjaro distros is it is an Arch-based system, but it is slightly more curated. So it's Arch with a little bit of extra polish and massage, just taking that extra step to make sure everything is working out of the box. You also have, from the Manjaro developers, a whole variety of desktop options to choose from, and there's community spins on top of that. One of the most powerful things about Manjaro is you have Arch, but it has a great GUI package manager built in, and you can get it on nearly any desktop environment. Now, some people have said the Manjaro forums are a very great friendly group of people, and I have other folks that I highly trust that say that Manjaro forums is some of the most toxic places on the internet. I'm not sure. I haven't been on their forums any point in time. Now, there have been some people, like Matthew Moore had a video talking about the struggles that he had getting Manjaro to work, that he really wanted it to work and couldn't. And some people have complained that in the past, it has broken itself on updates. Now, I have not heard anybody saying that it has broken itself on updates for the past few years. I personally have never experienced that running Manjaro a few times for lengthy periods of time myself. I've never had any of those issues with it. And as far as the hardware incompatibilities, those seem to be very, very rare. As long as you can get Manjaro installed on your system, it's probably going to work just fine. Now, of course, they do only support the 62-bit for their main line, but you can actually get, I think a community build has a 32-bit. So if you come on down here, they have a variety of different ways to sort them. So we have Mate, Budgie, Cinnamon, i3, Awesome Edition. I don't know what's so awesome about that, but anyway, OpenBox, KDE. So this actually has more desktop environments than any of the other distros that I know of as far as simply getting it installed. Now, if you're on a full-on Arch system, you can probably install anything you want on there. But Manjaro has an easy download. If you know exactly which desktop you want, you can come on over here, download the file, and away you are. They also have the ability to sort. Here's the flagships. These ones, let me take off flagships. So these are the beginner-friendly ones. They have the resource-efficient ones, which are lower system specs, and if you want a traditional workflow, you have these guys here. And it looks like I would generally believe all these. We have developer preview Mate, regular Mate, XFCEs, KDEs, and Cinnamon. And I would completely agree that those are all traditional workflows. So Manjaro is great in that it has the Arch core in it. It has a GUI package manager. It has one of the most beautiful interfaces there is. And out of the box, man, it just has so many desktop environments to choose from. And number 1 is Linux Mint. I always generally put Linux Mint on the top of the list, and for the very good reason that it is rock solid, it is very stable, it is easy to use. I know their forums are very user-friendly, and they really have this ability to keep with the times while maintaining the traditional elements that people want. For example, this year with Cinnamon 4, coming out in 19.1, they added a taskbar that is closer to the modern Windows panel, in which pinning things to the desktop, or pinning things to the panel rather, instead of the quick launch function. Now, I personally like the quick launch function, which you can A, return to the system, or B, set up your panel like that system as well, no matter which one you want. So they've maintained that modern look. They're with the times. If you are from Windows 10, you're moving over into Linux, Linux Mint 19.1 is going to give you the most user-friendly experience, and then it's going to be nearly identical in setup. Few little differences here and there, but not a whole lot. So I always generally put Linux Mint on the top of my list. This is great in that they still are supporting 64 and 32-bit processors. So no matter if you have a newer machine or an older machine, they have something for you. They have 3 desktop environments. Cinnamon is their flagship, and this is the group that develops the Cinnamon desktop. They also have Mate XFCE, and you can actually do the Linux Mint Debian edition, which only comes in Cinnamon, but this one here is, instead of being based on Ubuntu, is based on Debian instead. And so what you're getting with this is, if you don't necessarily like the Ubuntu, but you want that strength and stability of Linux Mint, the Linux Mint Debian edition is great, and I actually have some wonderful videos about that as well. So those are my top picks for Linux distros in 2019. So I will have in the description here and carded on YouTube, I will have videos to each of these different distros, so you can have a deep dive look in all of them. But I will also put the links in the description down below for people watching this video on other channels. So have a look at the links down in the description, and have a look at some of those other videos, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.